Welcome back to another video. So today we are going to discuss TEEL framework, which is one of the significant frameworks in the management subject. And before the discussion, I would like to say how we are going to proceed with the video. So firstly, we will be discussing about the requirement of TEEL framework, why it was discovered, or why it is necessary in a business perspective. And likewise, we will go ahead and talk about details of all the TEEL points. TEEL is basically an acronym, and we will discuss the entire details of the framework while going through the entire video. Okay, let's talk about the background of TEEL framework, why it's originated, and what its importance in the business context. If any person is trying to explain any idea to the audience, it is really important that the idea should be clearly communicated, because if the thoughts are not shared in a structured way or in a logical manner, there is a probability that the audience might not be able to understand what the person is trying to say. So that is the reason TEEL framework was designed, because it helps in articulating your ideas in a very structured and very logical manner. So let's talk about why there is a need for TEEL framework in management context. So as we discussed, TEEL is already helps in articulating your ideas in a very structured format, and that is what is needed in a business context as well. Because if the idea is not communicated clearly, then definitely the people will not be able to understand what the person is trying to say. So for that reason, we usually use TEEL framework, and not just because it's a clear communication of ideas, but it is also a framework wherein we provide some factual information, fact-based information, so that it looks evident, it looks very prominent and promising for the person who is listening to that idea. Because if we are giving any factual information, let's say we are talking about why there is a need for remote working. So if we are adding any kind of facts with this particular topic, then it would be easy for a person to understand why we are having this remote working scene. So now let's talk about the TEEL framework in detailed manner. Let's bifurcate all the 4 points of TEEL, which is the topic sentence and the evidence, then evaluation and link. So let's start with the topic sentence. So what is the topic sentence? Topic sentence is basically the main idea of what we are trying to say. It gives a clear picture and clear thought of what we are going to talk about. So let's try to understand a topic sentence through an example. So let's say my main idea is that remote working can lower down the cost for mid-sized enterprises. So this is my topic sentence. This is the main idea. This is the main topic that I'm trying to say. This is a very direct approach. So basically the topic sentence is a main point of discussion. So let's talk about the next step, which is the explanation. So in the explanation part, what we try to do is we try to elaborate our main idea. Let's say our main idea was that remote working reduces the cost of operations in a company. So to proceed with this, we will add some more information of why and how the remote working can reduce the cost of a company. For example, let's say we can add that if a company is providing remote working to its employees, then obviously the cost of the electricity and maintenance and office leases would be reduced. So this is a kind of explanation to the main point. So in the first part, we have discussed about the main idea that the remote working reduces the cost of operations. Then in the second part, which is explanation part, we elaborated that point and we added more information to it, which says that gives a detailed explanation of why the remote working reduces the cost of operations. So here we have added that, so if a company starts operating remotely, the expenses of that company would obviously lower down. So in a way, when we provided the main topic in the next explanation part, the explanation part bridges the main idea, which is our topic sentence, and it also explains a bit about how the idea would be good and would be working in the real life scenario. So the next part is evidence. Evidence is basically any kind of real figures or numbers or any kind of factual information that we can add to the explanation part. For example, I can say that Accenture is one of the companies which offered remote working to their employees, and it helped them in reducing their operating cost to up to 30%. So this is a kind of realistic example, which in a way which will prove that whatever I'm trying to say in the topic sentence as well as in the explanation part is evidence. So I'm not saying it from my own, but I have a realistic example for whatever claims I'm making. So the real reason for providing evidence is that we are trying to make it convincing for the listener that our idea is not just an idea, it's basically evidence based information. So the last part is link, wherein we are jotting down all the information together and providing a conclusive statement. Therefore, remote working is an effective strategy for cutting the costs. So we learned about the TEEL framework here, which is nothing but an acronym of topic, sentence, explanation, evidence, and link. So if we collect all the information together and explain the example from the very beginning. So very first sentence, the topic sentence, we discussed that remote working is strategy for cutting down the operation cost. Likewise, in the explanation part, we added more information and we mentioned why it is important for lowering down the costs. So we gave an example there that if a person, if an organization goes for remote working, then obviously the office leases and the electricity and all the other operational costs and expenses would be cut down. So this was the explanation part. And then we added an example to it wherein we mentioned that, for example, Accenture, when they moved to remote working, it helped them in reducing 30% of their operational cost. And likewise, in the last section, which was link, we ended up by saying that therefore, remote working is an effective strategy for lower down the costs. So this was all about the TEEL framework. We will be providing more information in our upcoming videos. Thank you.